Pledge allegiance to the flag.
To the flag of the United States of America.
To the
To
republic
the
The republic
and
which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so a couple things we have here. Why don't we go through the meeting minutes first? I think Melissa attached those. Let me just pull it up. Let me see here. Did everybody get a copy of the meeting minutes?
Yes.
All right. Do we have any corrections that need to be incorporated into the meeting minutes?
I'd move we approve the meeting minutes as presented.
Anybody second?
second,
Okay, roll call vote. Josh McNeil? You're muted, Josh.
Sorry, yes.
Okay, Justin Evans,
yes,
Aaron Taylor,
Yes.
Lincoln,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
and Don Essen is a yes also. Okay, so the meeting minutes are approved. Okay, and they'll be recorded as such. Okay, so the next couple of things on the agenda, I've been getting individual DPW capital items that need to be forecast for the 2023 budget. I attended the Finance Committee's meeting on Tuesday. I plan on doing that next couple of Tuesdays just to kind of see where everything's going with financing and all that stuff. What we have for, I call them receivables, people call them levies or whatever, but you know, from receivables to what we have to pay or what we are for our operating costs. And then we can figure out what we have for capital funds left over and then either budget or come up with a plan for it. But I'll just start by being frank with the whole committee. And Dave, is it Dave Smith? Excuse me.
Dennis.
Dennis.
Dennis, I'm sorry, I don't think we've met.
I think you introduced yourself at the last town meeting to me.
Oh, okay, and you are,
I'm the water and sewer superintendent for the DPW.
oh, okay, so you and Bruce work together?
Yeah, we're partners.
Okay, excellent.
He takes care of the highway park and tree side of things.
We did meet at the last meeting. I'm sorry, just but anyways, I'll just be frank with, you know, I've been with the committee for close to 5 years now, and for the longest time I struggled with kind of seeing if our role actually meant something, because it didn't seem like we had funding information to support the capital projects. So that's what I'd like to try to get my arms around, and I'm willing to take suggestions from anybody on this committee. I think the best way to understand what we can spend in capital improvements is to understand what we have for money, first of all. And if we don't have the money, we're talking about things we just can't get, or we'd have to go out and get some bonds or something else for. So it would be much easier to pick the low-hanging fruit right off the tree if we knew what we had for money, and then we could at least authorize those capital expenditures for the things that we can fund immediately, and then come up with a game plan, probably with the finance department, to fund some of the projects that are truly needed by the town, but the town doesn't have the money at this point in time to fund it. So I don't know how else to do it, guys, but that's kind of my approach. I want to kind of pass this around the round table and see what everyone thinks. I guess we'll start with you, Lincoln.
Yeah, so thank you, Don. So if I could just jump in for a minute, I would like to, you know, I know we've had the conversation, I certainly before I got here, but and then continue to have the conversation about what our role is, and I just want to redirect all the members of the committee to remember and and have a chance to review what was approved by town meeting last year in the amendments to what had been the Buildings, Facilities and Capital Expenditures Committee and is now called the Capital Committee. If everyone recalls, I think everyone was here at that moment, at that time, maybe not Justin Casanova Davis. But if everyone recalls, there were some little tweaks to what our charge is, but just to briefly quote it again, if I could, it's brief. So the committee shall be responsible for evaluating capital needs of the town, evaluating town facilities with the assistance of the town's facilities manager, and presenting projects and funding requests for town meeting. The committee shall also review requests for capital purchases, which shall be defined as purchases of vehicles and equipment, including technology, equipment, and software costing $20,000 or more and having a useful life in excess of 5 years. So, just to sort of recenter all of us, that is our charge. That is our charge as identified last year by town meeting. That's where our authority flows from that vote of town meeting. And as far as evaluating what we have to spend and then moving forward with that, I will very shortly have a more complete picture of that as we receive the final departmental capital requests. There's a couple little pieces outstanding, but in broad strokes, we have our free cash certification. It is our one-time source of revenue, which would all things being equal, be the primary source for our capital needs, and that does appear that it will be sufficient to cover all of the requests that have been received at this time. And we can get into that detail further because again, we're just waiting for a couple pieces of that. And the only caveat to that is the school's budget request. That is not directly in our purview as the capital committee, but it affects how much free cash we have, and it affects what we have to spend for our capital, our one-time revenue source. That's the outstanding question. There's the state statutory deadline for the school committee to certify a budget request to the two towns and assessment is March 19th. And I know they intend to take that vote at least by March 16th. So that's going to come into view here shortly as to what that assessment request is and what that means in terms of what our one-time revenue, what effect it may or may not have on our one-time revenue source. So that's all. Just wanted to say those two pieces.
So let me just add one more thing. So I guess to summarize that, Lincoln, are you going to have the free cash available number in I guess probably we should compile all the capital needs. We got the DPWs. Bruce sent me over things. I think that's to you also, Lincoln. I don't know if all the other committee members got it. I was going to distribute it in this meeting, and then we can talk about it going forward, and we'll vote on it next meeting. But I need to get the school department's budget. I need to get all the other departments' budgets, or at least capital needs. Get a dollar assigned to everything, and then probably Lincoln, maybe you should take the first pass at scrubbing it and saying, this just we can't do it. We're going to have to put this out in a farther forecast, or maybe we can do it.
And that's precisely what I'm going to, once these final pieces come in, should be, well, anyway, once these final pieces come in, that will be, we'll have those pieces, and it should be by early next week.
Excellent. Okay. So I guess we'll go around the round table, and what's everyone feel about, I guess, the way I'm going to approach this, or the way I want to at least be the committee chair and try to approach this. Do you think I'm right, wrong? Please give me criticism, good or bad. I'm okay with taking either or. It's the first time being the committee chair, so go ahead, Justin.
Thanks, Don. I do think this committee, the last couple of years, has been most effective when we really get into some of the technical aspects of projects. I think of the generators at the elementary schools was a huge, we pushed back, asked them to propose the right project, and I think got a better result after that. We did a similar thing with, I think, the fire panel with the schools and a couple of those kind of projects where we'd rather the project be done right than done fast, and we kind of push back on those. So it's not always what we can afford within our, with our free cash any given year. A lot of the times it's vetting out the projects themselves.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I would never push one above the other, because I think that is the technical group here, with Bob's skill set, Aaron's skill set, Justin, Josh's, myself. I think with the technical skill set here, I think that is what we bring to the table as our strongest suit. I just don't want to spend a ton of time on things that we just can't afford. I mean, that's where I'm coming from, and the gist of my conversations.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Fred.
and is it up for us to decide what the town can't afford? Or is it up to us to make a recommendation as to the validity of a project and the need of the project? And then, perhaps through Lincoln, the FinCom, et cetera, they did, in the Board of Selectmen, of course, they determine a method in which to go forward if the town wants it, how it will be paid for. Because technically you could afford anything if you have a debt exclusion. So I sort of look at our committee as being, the vetting area.
Yep.
Validity of a project.
And so just, we kind of touched on that earlier before you jumped on,
Okay.
Fred. And
I apologize to everyone for being late. We had a negotiation subcommittee for the teacher's contract earlier, so it just got out and I was rushing home.
okay. So just to summarize, just to get you up to speed is I think you're right. It's not our committee to worry about the funding, but as realistic people, I think, we manage our own budget to our own households, and we know if we can buy a new car or a new boat or whatever with the funding that we have in the bank or what our lending power. So we've kind of, Lincoln's going to be, be the lead on that and kind of pre-scrub things and then prioritize things. I'm not saying we would ever kick something off the table, but maybe we push it till the next year, or maybe we give it a longer forecast, because there might be other things that we could afford this year. And that's all I'm saying. I would never kick anything off a department's needs.
I could agree with prioritizing, and
Yeah.
there is a finite amount of money that we have to work with. But I think at times, you have to look at the validity of a project, and vet the project. And, as Justin had just said, push back.
Yeah.
We pushed back on the generators and said, hey, we'd rather spend more money and do it this way than try and cart a generator back and forth.
Right.
That makes perfect sense.
Okay. Did you get a copy of the meeting minutes last for the last meeting?
Yes, I did.
Did you have any comments? Or
No, I didn't.
Okay, so we already did a roll call. We all approved them. If you can just follow
Yep.
the record.
That's fine. I wasn't there, just it won't be reflected in the minutes. That's all.
Okay,
You have to go back to me.
all right. I guess Justin, Aaron, Josh, Bob, I value you guys' opinions. What do you think of where the committee should go? Please give us some feedback.
I think I agree with what Lincoln and Justin, particularly what Justin said. I guess the one thought that I have in mind, and I guess is understanding what the committee will do, is it's important to vet and push back, right? And so I think that's where the strength of our committee is. It's very simple. If our free cash is more than the capital improvement projects, we can vet them and we can say make it the best project possible.
Green
right?
lights for everything, yeah.
It's easy. But I do think there's a role for the committee now. Let's say there are more projects than free cash allows. I do think it's the role of the committee to present a priority list for town meeting to know what we would do with X amount of funds. Now, town meeting can decide to however or whomever, and Lincoln would be an instrumental part of that, and the finance committee and the select men. But this is the capital committee. We're vetting these projects a little more in depth than other members. So if we do not have all the resources we need to fund capital improvement projects, I think we should come up with a priority list, because that should be informative for town meeting members. So I think that's my opinion on it. But if Lincoln says we have all the free cash in the world to do the CIP projects, hey, let's just vet them and make it the best project possible. But our job's pretty easy in that case.
Right. Aaron, do you have any comments?
I can agree with everything that everybody's already said. We're here, we'll vet the projects as best we can, like with what they were talking about with the school and the generators. That was ridiculous. Let's put them on a trailer and go from school to school as we need them. Told them to go back and change that. And with the role of what the committee is now, that's our place to make a priority list and put it to the town. It's up to town meeting to decide whether or not they want to fund something, whether we recommend it or not. And I think that's just the best way to go about it. We get a priority list together, we vet what we need to and put it out there. And if town wants to pay for it, then there we go.
Okay, yep. Josh, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can agree with many of the comments that were made thus far. I know in the past we've actually made decisions, I believe, from our standpoint on the capital committee, and then the finance committee overturned them and decided that they were going to fund something that we decided that we shouldn't be funded, or we weren't going to fund or support in relation to whatever it might have been. But again, we've got multiple decisions being made across various committees. I guess there's a lot of confusion going on as far as to who's actually doing what. I mean, what is the purpose of this committee versus the finance committee? And I guess that's where the confusion, I think some people sort of get confused as to if the capital committee says yes and the finance committee says no, what happens? We just want to make sure that we're obviously number one, reviewing working with the departments, if you will, reviewing the capital requests that are coming in, making sure we all understand them, and then working to make sure that if the funding is or is not available, there's a plan of action in place to number one, at least have that particular capital item on a plan, and when it's going to be replaced, whether it be this year, next year, or 2 or 3 years from now, depending on the funding source, of course. And I mean, looking down the pipeline, in a variety of aspects, there could be a lot of federal money coming in relation to the post-pandemic situation. So as much as the money can be coming out of free cash, there may be other opportunities for various grants and other federal sources of funding to be able to provide for some of these projects too. So we got to keep that in the back of our minds.
Yep. I agree 100%. I'll just add one thing of my opinion of what this capital committee is. I don't think it's our role to override the department heads for saying that that's a waste of money, or that's an unneeded necessity for the town. I think we need to allow our department heads to run their departments, but maybe with some of our skill sets that we can bring to the table, maybe help them, maybe look at things a little bit different, or be able to actually expedite something, or to make it a better system, or maybe a different design, or whatever. I didn't think we should ever probably nix a project, but we probably could add to it. And that's the way I'm approaching it. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I always thought the department heads should be able to manage their own departments.
I think I can agree with that. I mean, I think as a department head, providing, you're setting a, foundation for what we're looking for as far as capital requests, there must be a reason behind why we're looking for something.
Right.
And I think, in a professional opinion, is certainly worth a lot when it comes to, whether it be public works, technology, fire, police, and so on and so forth. And I have to agree with you 100%. That, most likely the department head's not going to put forward a project that, doesn't need to be put forward. There's got to be a reason behind it. And obviously, information that's provided to the committee as far as to why they're looking to do what they're doing. So.
Yeah. I agree. Bob, you were gonna add some comments.
My feeling, I think that we discussed this before. The Madden report was saying that we should put so much money a year in for capital projects. We don't have that number. I think we should probably start getting that and at least start with a base. But for us to ask or try to decide how much money is available every year and that become a stumbling block for this committee, I think that's not fair. I think that we're really good with the expertise part of all of these projects. And I think that what we should be doing is asking each department head if there's a funding source. And if there isn't, then they'll have to go somewhere else to try to figure that out. But I think with help from the town administrator, that's going to make it work a lot better. I don't think we should be talking about money more than we should be talking about projects.
Okay, I
So
agree with that
again,
too.
and Lincoln, you probably know the answer. That the Madden report did require that we had a certain amount of money for capital projects. So I think that if every year we were given $100,000, and then we can get the projects that are coming in and try to set priorities the best we can, but we shouldn't do it without interviewing the department heads.
And to that point, we are doing that, and I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to be able to do that again next year. So at last year's town meeting in June, town meeting appropriated $100,000 to the capital stabilization fund to put some money aside. And I certainly, again, I'm cautiously optimistic depending on what happens with the final capital requests and the school's final operating assessment request that we will be able to do that again. And as you said, meet the Madden report's recommendations on that.
Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, sorry, one more comment. So, I know we had voted in the past, I think at town meeting in relation to a $20,000 amount for capital requests. My only, question or concern, I guess, is the fact that if we have other departments, whether it be, again, public safety, public works or whatnot, that do have capital needs that are one-time purchases that may be under $10,000 and they do have a life expectancy of at least 5 years. The ability to integrate that into a budget versus actually putting it as a capital item, it just seems like we'll be going like sort of a roller coaster up and down, up and down, up and down with the actual budget. And I don't know if that's, a problem, or, looking at that from a town meeting perspective, you may see a budget coming up and down, up and down, up and down, if that's going to be the case, because there are a variety of needs that may be below the $20,000 limit. That are, again, our one-time cost, and they do have a life expectancy of at least 5 years. So again, it's just something we should, sort of talk about and figure out if, we need to do something different, or at least think about this a little bit more.
Well, with that, you, Bob, Lincoln being department heads, and I guess with Denny, you guys tell us what to do, because you guys are the department heads. And I see your point that if you're buying one server rack or something and it's only 10K, but it's going to hit this operating cost budget this year, but it's not going to be on there next year. That's the roller coaster I'm assuming that you're referring to.
Absolutely.
So if I could, Don,
Yeah.
Josh, what are you saying? That you want this committee to approve items below 20,000 or?
Well, no, which I'm saying, basically, I'll just give you an example. Like if we were to, purchase, licenses for software, and the cost only comes up to, let's say, $12,000 or $15,000, it's below that $20,000 threshold. So am I to add that, $15,000 into an operating budget for 1 year, obviously the cost of the budget goes up $15,000 or $12,000, but then next year it's going to fall back down to 15 or $12,000, plus or minus based on the obviously other needs that may come in, of course, for that particular year. But it just seems like we'll be bouncing, budgets up and down if in fact there are capital needs that may need to be addressed that are below that threshold. That's my only question.
Yeah, so. But yeah, no, thank you, Fred. So Josh and I have talked about this. I mean, just to reiterate, town meeting, made a policy decision last year to define what a capital project is. And that was further reiterated by the adoption of some financial policies from the Board of Selectmen late last year. So I don't know. I think this has been decided. And, of course, town meeting could change it, but we just changed it last year. And the best practice in the financial field is to get, the capital level higher than $10,000. $20,000 is actually still like kind of a little bit low, is according to the industry standard. But, here we are, and we made this decision. It was sort of a medium point. This committee reviewed that warrant article. We, prior to town meeting last year, voted, I think unanimously, but certainly we voted in favor of, or to recommend, and to express to town meeting that we, the now capital committee, were in support of that capital level. So this has been decided, in my opinion.
Lincoln?
Yes.
And hopefully you could answer this for me. There still wouldn't be anything preventing a department head from going to the Board of Selectmen and requesting that money within, even if it was within their operating budget, knowing it was a one-time expense, or perhaps putting the project or the purchase separately on the warrant, even though it's not considered capital and wouldn't be called a capital item. It would be a sum of money to purchase X, so to speak.
Yeah, there's nothing to stop that. It's just that it's contrary to the decisions that have been made over the last year. But no, yes, I mean, but the point is, yes, all things being equal, according to what town meeting has decided, what the Board of Selectmen has decided, is that would be in the operating budget request.
Because
Just a quick thing, Don, because I know we got DPW, and I want to get to DPW's project.
Yeah.
But obviously, I'm a budget analyst. I do the budget for Brookline. A best practice is actually, like you said, it should be higher than $20,000. It's normal budgeting procedures. If you have something within your budget that's operating, it's going to go up 1 year, it goes down. But you communicate with your the budget manager, and you let that know for future years. I would support us actually raising the cap, because when you get to the minutia of those small amounts, I don't think it's really effective. I think actually we should put more into the operating budget, ideally, but we'll work there. We'll get there. But there it is. That's a best practice. Just want to let people know.
Okay, so I think we're all kind of in sync with everything. I think we're all on the same page. I don't think anybody's off in a different direction. So that's good to hear. Okay. Now, I guess I got to ask you, Lincoln, to help me with this. With the committee numbers, do we have, what is the number of committee members that we need? And do we have the right amount?
In terms of this committee?
Yes.
Yeah, so we have 9 committee members and 1 school department liaison. And so 8 of us are here this evening.
Okay. All right. And so, all right. I guess let's get to the DPW. So who can share that DPW request? And I guess what I'd like to do is, not everybody has seen this yet. And what I would like to probably do is implement committee policy, and I'm just gonna throw this out there right now. I know I've talked to you personally about it, Lincoln, and you thought it was a good idea. But the policy I'd like to do, and this was driven from last week's or last meeting vote that we took on the DPW building, and we just kind of rubber stamped it. We did that for a bunch of reasons that we all kind of knew a little bit about the project. We've heard about the project, we've witnessed the project, and we just rubber stamped it. And then Lincoln forwarded some of the budgetary, I guess, estimates on a spreadsheet. I went through them the next day, and I had some major questions, and I probably would have liked to have those questions answered before we just rubber stamped it. I know that I am total support of this DPW building. I drive by it 3 or 4 times a week, and I can see that it's falling apart. I know they need a building, a maintenance building. I'm totally supportive of it, but I just had some questions that I wish I could have asked prior to rubber stamping the go ahead, even though, and it didn't get, we didn't have a quorum with the town meeting, so we're back at it. So that drove me to calling Lincoln and kind of wanting to implement a policy or wanting to discuss a policy to vote on, that unless it's an emergency condition, that all committee members should have one or have the opportunity to digest all the documents supporting a project that's brought to the committee that day, and we should vote on it the following meeting. Instead of, obviously, if it's an emergency, it's emergency, right? But if it's something that we can at least absorb and digest every document for a project, we should have that opportunity. I think we're doing, we're not doing a civics duty if we're just rubber stamping things. So I've drafted something up, and we'll talk about it after we go through the DPW thing, but that's kind of where I want to go with this. And we can talk about it after the DPW presentation, but I would prefer if we don't vote on it today, we vote on it the next meeting, and just have everybody digest everything and see what's in there before we just rubber stamp things.
Mr. Chair,
Sure, go ahead, Fred.
I don't think that we need any separate policy. If you don't entertain a motion, it's not going to go forward. And we'll have it on the next meeting. Make sure that people get the information, probably a 48 to 72 hour window prior to a meeting, come up with a time frame, and everyone's, I would think, would want that extra time. I know it's one things we struggle on school committee with, is we'll get documents to have to study right up to 5 minutes before the meeting, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's exactly my point, Fred. I'm glad you're supportive of that. And that anything on emergency, obviously, if it's an emergency, it's got to get taken care of right away. But if it's something that we have the means to I guess, take in the data and be able to analyze the data and then be able to make educated comments instead of just glancing through something and just rubber stamping it. That's kind of where I think we should be doing.
Or even if we have, like tonight, we have Dennis here. Dennis goes over, his reasoning and what the needs are. And then we say, thank you for coming in. We dissect that and we put it on the agenda for next week for our next meeting for a vote. That's all.
That's exactly where I want to go with this. So does anybody have any comments on that? Bob, you muted.
Sorry. In this case, where the DPW is looking for a new truck and a piece of equipment, and it is over the threshold of $20,000, what are we going to dissect? Are we going to call dealers and get different prices? There's nothing that our expertise is going to be helpful with. So, I looked at this and I have some questions, like why can't we get a used ambulance or something like that? But I think we should be able to take in the information and make a decision on this, in this case, right away. And I do agree with you about the DPW building. We've been talking about it for more than 10 years, but we did have a proposal from environmental partners, and it ends up we didn't get the money approved at town meeting because there wasn't a quorum. But I agree that that did feel like it was rushed, and we probably should have had a little bit more time to sit with the documents. But this one, they need a new box truck for the water department, and they need a new generator. So what are we going to dissect?
So you bring up a really good point. You're bringing up, things that I just looked at, the DPW building with the environmental partners quote, and I felt like I did a disservice to the community because we just rubber stamped it, and then we got the numbers afterwards, and I had major questions. Maybe your opinion is valid, where if it's just a truck or generator, maybe that's different. I don't know how we should, or maybe Fred had the right answer, where maybe we bring it to a motion for a vote, or we don't, and we do
Yeah,
it.
and
case by
I
case.
think if we need more time, if the committee feels like they need more time, but I don't over a truck. I mean, I can say, did you get other quotes for a box truck? And how did they compare? And a generator, that's going to be plus or minus, within $5,000 of any other manufacturer. But the department heads know what brand they like to use. They know which ones are reliable, and they know which ones are probably best suited for that job. And I do know that they need these generators for the pump stations. If something goes bad quick and they lose a generator, then we're going to be in trouble. So, this is something that I do agree with you that we should all take a look at it and vote the next week. And I don't think this is going to hurt that request if we do that, or even at the next meeting. But there's certain things that we don't need to dissect. In our opinion, our expertise really isn't deep enough to help with that. So, but I do want to ask them some questions about the box truck, because I thought that box truck they had, or at least one of them, was an old retired ambulance.
So let me just ask one more question to get educated. And it's probably for Lincoln and maybe for Justin Evans. Because I don't know the answer. But if we approve one or two items on this list, does it then go to the finance department, or does it go to town meeting, or where's it go from there? Or does it just get approved?
I can answer that if you want, Justin. So
Yeah, you take it.
It goes to town meeting if the Board of Selectmen place it on a warrant to go to town meeting. Our role is to advise town meeting as to whether or not we believe that this should be approved. So what I would suggest is that we're going to be having a draft town meeting warrant shortly. These items I certainly expect will be on there per the decision of the Board of Selectmen, and probably all of the capital items will be included. And then we, as a committee, take a vote when we have that draft town meeting warrant, when we have the entirety of the plan, and then vote on each one at a future meeting together at one meeting.
Okay, that's kind of where, that's what I was hoping was the answer. Because instead of doing things in dribs and drabs, maybe we will have time to do everything as a package.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds good.
All right, so I guess either Lincoln or Denny, if you guys can screen share and go through the line items of the DPW request.
Yeah, I can share, and then Dennis can take it away here for the discussion. Just a moment. Everyone can see that, right?
Yep.
So take it away, Dennis.
Okay, what you're looking at there is our current tool truck that we use for water breaks. It's not doesn't necessarily show up in this picture, but there's lighting on the back of it that lights the scene of a water break while we work on it. And it's certainly a step up from what was the previous vehicle to that. It holds a lot of tools. It also has a heated compartment that when dewatering pumps freeze during a water break in the wintertime, we can rotate them out of the enclosed body to defrost them. It's worked out well for us. It's a composite body on the back. It's lightweight. What we're looking at in the next truck, but it's on its way out. It's a 2010, and with the supply chain time, we're probably looking at somewhere in a year to year and a half, possibly two, after it's approved at town meeting, before we see a replacement. Especially the type which would be I sent an example. I don't know if you still have it, Lincoln. So the type of truck that we were looking to replace this with would be a just under CDL required, somewhere around 28,000 GVW, like a Ford F600 or a General Motors 5500, and we would the reason we would want that is, as opposed to the van cutaway, is that we could have an onboard compressor with it. And we could also have a generator, an electrical power for it, again, for scene lighting. It would also, we're considering something with a power tailgate and a roll-up door, we use compactors at water breaks, and they're pretty heavy. So usually we have to get two guys to lift it up into the back of the truck with a power lift gate. We could use that. We could also use it for moving pumps and portable generators around, and other heavy equipment, heavy items such as fire hydrants or gate valves. So the truck that we're proposing that we replace this one would be, a lot more capable than the one we have.
Dennis, do you have a picture of the one that you're proposing? Or even a specification sheet or anything? Or the quote from the dealer?
Well, I have several quotes. The problem with quotes is that by the time we actually get ready to buy the vehicle, they're done. They're expired.
Okay, I get that. Yep.
They've changed. So we try and do I have three different prices, and there's somewhere in that the highest one is just under that $160,000 range. But like I said, this is a serious vehicle as far as the way it would be equipped. One of the things, like when we go to it, we have to tow a compressor, which has its own limit as far as limitations. The other thing is that if we go out to an emergency situation where a house needs to have the water cut off because they've broken their valve off in their cellar or have a plumbing leak somewhere, and we get to the curb stop and we can't get on it because it's full of mud or debris, we have to come back to the shop, pull out one of the tow behind compressors and bring it back to where we're going. And we find that this happens quite a bit, especially it's almost always like the emergency situation where we want to either shut down a main because of a main break, or somebody's needs a shutdown to their house service because they've done something or something's come apart in their house. Having the compressor, and this is the way that and we got this idea. We didn't think of it ourselves. We got this idea from watching other water departments. This is what they do. The compressor is mounted in the truck itself. It's engine driven, and you always have it. And the same thing with inverter. Having an inverter on board to, it just seems like a basic piece of equipment that you should have, as opposed to what we currently do is have a little portable generator that's on wheels that we lift into the back of it, and when we need it, if we need a drill or an electric saw, or in some cases we might use an electric pump, and bring it with us that way. And this vehicle would again have the enclosed backyard back. We'd have some kind of heat in the back of it for the frosting pumps. The problem is that, from what I understand, the undermount air compressor is something that only is available in a truck chassis, not a van chassis. They haven't come up with that yet.
So one thing, so is the 160, is that fully outfitted with what your needs are, being
Yes.
the generator and the compressor? So
Yes.
what would the base cost be of the vehicle, of the F650, without those outfitted components?
So my government municipal HQ, which is this, one of the state bid sites, they estimate their bid is overall 154.91. The cabin chassis by itself, is 42.3. In a Ford Super Duty, say of F600, sorry. It's right around 158.9, and the cabin chassis is similar. That is in that $45,000 range. Liberty Chevrolet, which is another state bid, in a Chevy product, it would be $50,000 for the truck, the cabin chassis. And then completely outfitted would be 159.8. But again, these are current. These are all pretty much like 30-day estimates,
Yeah.
or quotes. So like I said, so if it was to be approved at the next town meeting, and we ordered the truck, inspected it then, and found somebody to buy it at that 160 range, that would provide the vehicle at that 160 range. That's saying, whatever increases happen between now and then. And they would order the truck itself, and then when the cabin chassis came to whatever deal it would be sent off to a subcontractor to have the body, the air compressor, the inverter, the power to all that stuff on it. So you're, from the time you order it next July, you're looking at least a year, if not 2, before you see the vehicle.
No, understood that the 160 is subject to increases of when we pull the trigger. I get it.
Right.
Josh?
Yeah, sorry. So Dennis, is this like vehicle used on a daily basis, or is it just strictly used for the water sewer water main breaks?
The current vehicle we use daily, and we would plan on using this one daily too.
Thank you.
Fred?
Is it 4-wheel drive or 2-wheel drive?
You can get it in 4-wheel drive. If to do what we wanted to do, we'd only need it in 2-wheel drive. The only reason I can see that we would really want it to be in 4-wheel drive is if we wanted to also plow with it. And we don't. You got a truck body full of tools and possibly a jackhammer and other various equipment. and you hit a manhole while you're plowing, or you're pushing back corners with a plow, and all that stuff's kind of rattling around. One of the reasons why this particular van has lasted as long as it has is because it doesn't do snow.
Thank you.
Justin Evans?
Thanks. So just from my experience with gas companies, they do use a similar truck like this with a onboard mounted compressor and inverter. So yeah, this is a pretty standard operation for that kind of work.
Utilities.
My question for you though is maybe even a question for Lincoln. What's the anticipated source of revenue for this, or source of funding for this? Is it the enterprise account, or is it the
Correct. Water,
Okay.
sewer, retained earnings.
retained earnings?
Well,
Okay.
Based on your conversation earlier, that is the one big difference with water and sewer as opposed to everybody else. Is, that is the source of funding.
Always makes our job easier here.
Yeah, you guys are self-funded. You guys are a profit sharing company or department.
We only make money when people go to the bathroom. That's it.
All right. All right, do you want to move on to the next item? I think
Sure.
we got all the information on that one.
All right, so what you're looking at here is a representative of a new generator, and I have several quotes available for that. The one that I gave you is the highest. It's 40, I believe, just under $41,000. I'm sorry, $42,000. We have other ones that are as low as 26. It all depends on the different companies and whether they're on the state bid. You can buy tow behind generators off the state bid list too. Just have to find them. I've got 3 quotes so far, and like I said, the lowest is 26, and this is the highest is $40,995. Our current generators that we use, they're older, so they're larger than this. But the ones are 91, the other ones are 95. During the nor'easter, a few months ago, we had all the stations down. We have 12, and we have some stations that have standby generators, and that's another thing we want to keep going as far as putting standby generators at the stations. But there are some stations that we're never going to have the room to put standby generator. We never got the easements for that much room. Didn't plan on. There was no pre-planning for it. So we're always going to have a need for tow behind generators. And like I said, our current ones are ones are 91, 9s are 95. During that nor'easter, we had 12 stations out that needed the services of a tow behind. So we had 2 crews doing 6 stations each during the entire nor'easter. Pretty much when Whitman is pretty much completely sewered now. There are somewhere around 200 accounts in Whitman that do not have sewer. Right, our stations are pretty much working at full capacity, so to speak. So we need, when they would get done with the round of 6, each crew doing 6, they'd more or less have to just start over again. The next station would already be behind, when they would get back to it on the second run. And they basically that's all they did is just all night go from one to the next, pumping them out, and then when they were done with all, each the 6 that each had, they would start over and just keep doing this. During that storm, one of the plugs, the wires came loose out of one of the plugs, and that's that particular generator. We fixed it ourselves, but we took it apart and put it back together. Was out of service for about an hour. And we had some backups that they didn't get to the point of a house, but it filled the wet wells up at that time. If it had been longer than that, and we didn't have any other means of doing this, if we had to use the one generator to do all 12 stations, we would have fell behind quickly. And then the other point about this is their age. They're 91 and 95. you know, they're questionable all the time. I mean, they seem in good shape. We've taken good, maintained them through the years. But having a third generator as a backup would be some insurance. The other thing that we can do with these is as things go down, start to wind down, you know, the power doesn't always come back on at the same spot, you know, all at once. All 17 or, you know, 12 generator or stations didn't all come back on power at the same time. You get to a point though where you're down to 2 or 3. You could take the generator and just station it there, you know, for the entire time. And while you did, you know, if you went and you could rotate your crews out, you know, if you had a generator that you could just leave there, as opposed to, you know, having to keep it, you know, now only having enough to rotate all the time. So that's, you know, age of our current generators, and just having some basically cheap insurance to make sure that we can always have something, a generator ready to go as far as repumping the stations when we have a power outage. We did lose the generator at Old Coach Road. Our next alternative is with that, because it had no ability to connect a tow behind to. It was eliminated when they put the generator there. Was a pump truck, which that during that period, and that generator, it lasted almost half of the storm, but during it failed the last half of the storm, and during that time, we used a pump truck to move the sewage from that station to one of the main stations where it was that was on generator. We spent like $6,600 and pump truck fees. And all I need, it's basically, we have 2 or 3 storms where that happens, and we bought the generator.
Right. I just got a couple of questions. If
Sure.
You have, I think I heard you say you have 12 lift stations.
No, we have 7. We have 17 stations.
Oh, okay, 17 lift stations.
So
okay.
12 during the nor'easter. 12 of them were out of power without a generator. We have Auburn Street, which is our main pumping station. That every drop of sewer that comes out of Whitman goes through Auburn Street. It has a 32A cat generator in the building. The same with the South Ave Commercial Street pumping station. It has a 32A cat generator inside of it. Those are large large pumping stations.
Are those both natural gas or diesel?
No, those 2 are diesel. Okay, we have a generator at Oakwood Pump Station, which is propane. We have another generator that was recently about 5 years ago was installed at Rowena. That's natural gas. And then I'm sorry, Rowena is propane, and then we have a 5th generator at Old Coach Road, the one that failed during the last nor'easter. That's natural gas.
So, I mean, it would seem to make sense to eventually migrate to have a stationary generator, even if it's pad mount with an exterior closure, at every single lift station. I mean, that just makes sense.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's DEP is we require, because we need to be making progress and towards that. The DEP, that's one of the things they want, but there are some locations that we're not going to be able to do that. We don't have there's just physically not the room there to do it.
Okay.
The Bedford Street by Palco Plastics. I mean, as it is now, we fight with them for space to pull a tow behind it. A lot of times we end up with a tow behind on the sidewalk or on Route 18 while we service the stations, because they have trucks. They're a working, functioning business, and it's, especially if we're out of power during the day, they're open even when they don't have power.
Yeah. A couple other questions I have. So, what kW is this generator that you're
35.
35 kW?
Yeah,
And-
it's capable of 480, 208, and 120.
Nice, okay. Is, I don't, you can't really tell from the picture, but is it a sound attenuated, kind of a very quiet enclosure? So if you had to put it next to a resident or something for a long
Right.
extended time, they wouldn't be upset.
Okay, all right, so I would, that can be, that we will order that. This particular one may not be. This is just a generic picture that I picked up off of the, and just so that you get an idea of what it looks like.
Okay,
But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
The two we have now are sound attenuated.
okay. That's it. So, well, I guess the last question is, if it's 35 kW, I'm assuming that would support your biggest load.
It would, as far as the ones that need a generator now.
That don't
We could
have a
not-
stationary generator, right?
Right, so we could not, like, we have, so if the generator fails at Auburn Street, we don't have anything that would be big enough to support Auburn Street.
So
And
what would we do on it? What would we do? Would we call Caterpillar?
We'd be in trouble to some extent. You could, at that point, there are several generator companies that we deal with, that we could call and ask for, it would be like the size of a tractor trailer style generator, and they would come in and they would direct wire it. And we would get the station going eventually, but in the meantime, we might suffer some flooding.
Would that also include sewage backing up into people's places?
It's got a long ways to go before it gets into houses. I mean, Auburn Street has hundreds of feet of main that would have to fill up first.
Okay. All right.
I'm not gonna lie to you, it's possible, but unlikely. And
Okay.
And the idea is that, like I said, we try and maintain relationships with a couple of people that can supply, rental generators, and it's just getting everybody, I mean, the only thing we could possibly do is to try and make it quicker to make the connection. But the way it is now, they basically just drag the cord in into the building and disconnect physically disconnect the wires and put the tow behind generators wires on connected to it and run the station.
Okay, I think the only thing I would like to see is probably a long-term plan to try to, what you can put on permanent stationary generator. I think we should look, that should really be like a long-term capital plan. And I think that I would support that. And I think, most people would probably support that need instead of your team running around trying to connect a portable generator,
So currently we're working on doing, we want to provide a permanent mount generator at Belcher. We have funds for that. Probably it's trying, we had kind of a bad experience with Rowena and Old Coach. That the company, those were soup to nuts projects. When it was done, we found out it wasn't so much everything. They left out instrumentation and SCADA notifications that just weren't included, and there's a lot of things we probably could have done ourselves, and that's what I'd like. I'd like to do like a lot of the ditch digging, the conduit laying, pouring the pads and stuff like that. The problem is that with the crew we have and the problems we're having right now, we're just not finding the time to get to it.
Yeah. All right. Well, does anybody have any other questions?
Yeah,
Justin?
Dennis, thanks for joining us tonight. I have just two quick questions. For the other generators you have, you said they're 91 and 95. Do you have a timetable or idea that you might replace those at some point? Also, generally speaking, your team has done pretty well maintaining and servicing these. What's the general life expectancy of these generators?
I would, so we have some light towers that are very small generators. That we bought, used off of a rental place, and we're still using them. We bought them probably close to 8 or 9 years ago. And, one of them, the back end of it failed, and, we just ordered a new one and replaced it. And we can still use it. I mean, getting to the point where the wiring on them is starting to be brittle and, you know, but, you know, you can rebuild them, you know, up until the part where, the parts become obsolete, you know, they don't make them. You know, I mean, that's as far as the electronics and the sewer cabinets and, at the large, that's what we're finding is that we, you know, you just can't buy the parts for it to replace it no more. Things like transfer switches and, breakers.
Josh, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to mention, I believe from a, residential standpoint, that I think the generators are good for like 2,000 hours. But I think that back to Dennis's point, I think the biggest issue is the fact that a lot of these generators don't reach the number of hours before the actual parts are no longer available. And I think that's where the problem becomes, is the fact that you're holding on to a generator that you're using and relying on part replacements when in fact, unfortunately, it could take 2 weeks or more, if that, to find parts for an older generator like this. I mean, it's the same thing we deal with copiers. It's why we can't have copiers laying around for 12 to 15 years, because you can't find the parts, after the 10-year point. So it's just troublesome.
So we're always going to need two in a situation like that. So that nor'easter. And so if we had a third generator, if we had one broke down, we would still have two. So and Josh is, I mean, they can be fixed, but Josh is right. It might be a while before we get the parts. I came this close to saying that old coach was an emergency and buying a used generator there. I spoke to Lincoln about it. But they finally came through with it was the electronic control module was bad. They finally came through with it, but I was really at my wit's end as far as, because they were talking about this, it was after the nor'easter, and they were talking about high winds and another snowstorm or a snowstorm coming, and I just I couldn't see going through using a pump truck again.
And if I could just interject, Dennis is being modest and sort of circumspect about how serious that was and how hard he and his guys worked to make sure that this was resolved. I mean, so for that was certainly an unexpected storm. I think we learned a lot of lessons as a town about we can't rely on the cell carriers. That was probably the biggest lesson. As far as communicating with each other. Clearly they completely fell down, but just to sort of briefly reiterate that, I mean, Dennis and his team worked around the clock, and it all it fell into place because of their hard work and their persistence and preparation before. So for example, there's no guarantee that we're going to have access to a pump truck at a particular time. Dennis has great relationships with people who have them, but if we get a category 3 or 4 hurricane, are we going to have access to that? Who knows? Probably not. Can they even get here with the trees on the road? Who knows? Probably not. So, and the fact of how hard they worked and how close we were to having from that old coach road failure of the generator, how close we were, I think people should know how much we need this, especially after the lessons learned from there. And just one other quick note on generators is that one of the other things amongst many others that we learned as a town coming out of that was to get back and make sure that the two town buildings that didn't have full gas powered generator capabilities prior to that, we're almost in position to have that fully wired in the work of Todd DeCudo, the town hall custodian, in working on that over the last few months to make sure that the original hook in for the transfer switch for the gas powered generator at the senior center wasn't done quite right when it was put in there. So that's been resolved. So now the senior center has full gas powered generator capabilities now, and we're almost there with the library, which did not have it before. So just, there's a lot of lessons we learned from that. This is definitely one of the big ones, but a lot of other ones regarding communication and all kinds of things that we've worked to become resilient on over the last few months.
Okay. Anybody else got any questions on the generator? I think it's a great idea. I think, I would even like to have Dennis's team actually put together a 5 or even a 10-year plan to get everything stationary, a stationary generator. So I think, nobody wants raw sewage running down the street, that's for sure. And, if it's something that the town needs to budget for, that's an important thing.
I have a couple other comments, not necessarily related to this. I spoke to environmental partners and I told them about my meeting with you guys tonight. And he's, the original guy that led the design on the building. And he's offered it. He said, if you guys want to get together and have him come attend a Zoom meeting, he'd be more than happy to talk with you, at any time you'd like. The other item that I would like to tell is that environmental partners also, they're our engineering team. While they've been waiting for the approval from DEP for the SRF loan, they went back and there's a section of the force main project that requires directional drilling. It's beside the capped Brockton dump. And they consulted with the DEP that was originally supposed to have required drilling through there. And one of the things that we have to do there is we have to do test points, one to locate where the utilities are in Brockton, where the force main is, and also just to analyze what the soil's like, and to make sure that there's no gases coming from the closed landfill. And they proposed to the DEP that if we don't find anything, if it's all in the clear, and we fully expect it to be, and we think there's a good chance that it will be, if we could do an open cut as opposed to directional drilling. If we can do the open cut through that section, we will save somewhere between $0.5 to $1 million.
Wow.
So that's
Hey,
something.
That's huge. Into your first point about environmental partners, I think we've all probably talked a little bit about, we do need to would love to have them come in to, my first thing would be for them to explain the project, and then 2, to go through the budgetary on a line item type of basis. But I firmly welcome them to come in. If we'll talk on a sidebar on this, the committee members and myself, and then we'll get back to you, Dennis, on that. And we'll let you know a couple of forecasted meetings and whatever's convenient for them and for us. I think we make that happen. So I think we'd all love to understand a little bit more about it, the whole project.
Sure.
Okay.
And anybody that has any questions for me, feel free to email me, call me. I'm here in the office. I'm more than happy to spend whatever time it takes to go over any of this stuff with you.
Excellent. Thank you. Oh, Josh.
Don, are we voting on these articles tonight? These 2 articles from Public Works?
I think it's not going to hit town meeting for a while anyways. I think I was planning on having another meeting within 2 weeks with this committee. And I think we should vote on it that next meeting. I think that would still be within the timeline of the town meeting. Is that correct, Lincoln?
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate what we were talking about earlier. So I think I strongly recommend that we as a committee wait until the entire capital plan is presented by each department and then vote it all together on one night, whenever that is. Likely, I think most likely, I think what would make the most sense is probably early April. Or whenever we're done and we feel like we've completed our review.
When is the meeting that I have to go, I shouldn't be asking you, but I am. That I have to go in front of the finance committee and.
Yeah, April, I believe it's 12th. Just a minute.
So even if we could chip off some of these stuff like for the DPW, even if we take a couple of them per meeting, I'd be okay with that as long as we keep track of everything. And then, by April 12th, we could have everything approved or maybe more questions or something like that. But I guess to answer your question, Josh, probably not till next meeting.
April 19th.
Okay.
Yeah, I just know, I can ask the question, because in the years past, we've voted, and I believe, each meeting we've done, several departments and voted on them at the time, but it makes sense, I think, to do them all at once, certainly.
Okay. Okay, anything else, Dennis?
That's about it as far as I can, is the capital requests go. I mean, I will meet with and go over my operating budget with the finance committee, but it's if you've seen it before, it's not a whole lot different than last year. And Bruce's, some of the projects that he has include, we share, there are a lot of items we share, equipment, and some equipment that in the past that the highway has bought all by themselves, but we share now, and that equipment was bought before water sewer enterprise. Some of it's as old as in the 90s, and he's asking now to share the responsibility between with water sewer as far as the purchase of that stuff, and I fully support those, his requests as far as that go. A lot of that stuff we use, at least half, some of it more than half, in loaders and the loader and other vehicles that his team uses to help support us. And like I said, I'm anything that he's proposed that he's shown me, I'm in support of.
Excellent.
That's about it.
Thank you for your time. We
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
gentlemen.
Thanks,
Thank
Dennis.
you, Dennis.
Dennis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I've got, Lincoln, I don't know if you received this from a playground inspection of New England study. Have you guys seen this?
I do have it, not officially from the schools, but yes, I have seen it.
Where it's not on the agenda, can we even discuss it?
Well, I think we can't we have, can we talk about things to put on the agenda? Or can we have an open discussion on certain things that isn't on the agenda or not?
If it's not on the agenda, and I just don't want to see us run into something that somebody from the schools perhaps feels slighted, that we were discussing a capital item and the schools weren't invited to be discussing it, so to speak. And, in general, with open meeting law, if something's not on the agenda, we're not supposed to be addressing it at all.
Okay, is that
Unless, yeah, unless it's
consensus?
brought up in public forum, I believe, right?
Okay,
I didn't get a chance to look at the agenda, but do we have other business on the agenda?
Just the two items from the
Okay.
DPW, I believe.
yeah, that was
We
it.
can always put other business on it. I mean, I agree with Fred. I wouldn't discuss it now. But if you
Right.
put other business, you can say, all right, let's put this on the agenda for the next week or something like that. So it's
Okay.
out.
So, well, let me ask you that, and from a legal standpoint, can we globally stop putting on the agenda other business and
Like you-
discuss
You
other
create
things
the
we want?
agenda, you put whatever you want on there.
So,
I'm
so Don,
asking
you can just
for-
put on there other business that might reasonably come before the committee.
Okay, and that kind of would open the panel for discussion. Okay, okay. So going forward, I think we'll probably have that language on there. Go ahead, Fred, did you have something?
Well, I was just gonna say, if we are gonna be discussing that or having it on the agenda, I would ask that we invite the school liaison. I consider myself to be on here as a member of the public. Granted, I'll have some knowledge in school business, but he would be the person that would be here to discuss the school projects.
And the school liaison is now being, and we will ensure that he is now being CC'd on all meeting notices and
Okay.
agendas for this committee going forward.
Great, and that's Mr. Jones.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, well, with that, I think we've completed our task for tonight. Does anybody have anything that they want to bring to the committee?
Just a quick question. I'm looking forward to getting off, but when's our next scheduled, like, how are
Let's talk
how-
about that.
Lincoln, how have the capital projects
So-
come out? You have most of them, or?
Yeah, so what I'd suggest, thank you for bringing that up. What I'd suggest is that we sketch out together as a committee briefly. We sketch out when we would like to talk with whom. And then, we can make sure that the department heads know about it. And so that ahead of time, and I can help work through with their schedules to make sure we do that. So remaining, we have police and fire. I would suggest that would make sense to do that on one evening. And
Do you think we
then-
could merge those two together?
certainly.
Okay,
Then Bruce Martin, the Highway Parks Superintendent, and the schools. And at one, in the final, four meetings, I would suggest. The schools, Bruce, police and fire together, and facilities, sort of general facilities.
does facilities cover all other buildings, like the senior center and the library and the town hall? I mean, is that what
Yes.
facilities would cover? Okay. Okay, and that's you, Bob? You're in charge of all those?
Yeah, and there's some things to discuss about that, but we don't have any capital projects right now. We just completed one at the fire station. Came out well.
Is the armory under the fire department, or is it still kind of under your umbrella?
It's a town building. I think it's up to Lincoln, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a town building that's mostly used by the fire department, but it's a town building.
Okay,
It's a great building.
That's right.
never been in there.
Yeah, we should absolutely, if anybody wants a tour of that building, that please do email Chief Clancy and CC me, and we'll make sure that happens.
Other than that, I think we've completed our task. Do I hear any motions to?
Motion to adjourn.
Hold on, one last thing. So why don't we carve out a couple of dates for the
Yeah,
next
so
meeting?
that would be helpful. So, yes, please. So I'd suggest, my suggestion would be, so we're talking about 4 meetings, I think. We could certainly compress those more if the committee wants, but I'd suggest, I don't know if folks want to meet next week with school vacation week. Otherwise, March 3rd, 10th, 17th, 24th, maybe, or 10th, 7th, I don't know.
Just, I prefer not school vacation week, so that'd be ideal. But also, Lincoln, are we gonna have one final one as well after the 4th, just to vote for everything?
Yeah, I think we should, yes. So maybe it's, and the other thing is that I do think, I mean, if we work efficiently, I do think that we can, for example, I think certainly the schools is one evening and Bruce is probably one evening. But the police and fire requests are pretty simple this year. So maybe we want to combine, do that together with facilities. So what I would suggest is that we do March 3rd for the highway parks, March 10th for the schools, as long as it works with the schools' agenda or schedule, and then March 17th for police, fire, and facilities.
Does that interfere with any other, 'cause I know a lot of committee members are on different panels. Does that interfere with anything else? I mean, it works for my schedule. Thursdays work. Do you want to try to target 5:30, or is 5:30 okay for everyone?
Are we gonna visit meeting at town hall, or are we still gonna keep on the Zoom?
I'll be
Um,
honest, I was one of the people that responded. I prefer Zoom.
I like Zoom,
Here.
especially with a mask mandate still into play, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't want to sit around everybody with a mask on. And I was at a finance meeting the other day, and you could barely even hear what's going on. It's just, it wasn't fun. So I prefer
Oh, we can
Zoom
have
on the
it at-
mask mandates going on.
Have it in a school after the 28th. We don't have to wear masks.
Okay. Zoom until the mask mandate is my vote, you know?
Fred doesn't like zooming.
No, actually, I don't mind it at all, but I think that you miss something sometimes by not all being in the same room.
Yeah, we've been missing it for 2 years, I think now, for a lot of people.
So,
All right,
just for planning purposes here and make sure we can get the right people there at the right times. So just to reiterate, March, so 5:30 PM each evening is what I'm hearing. March 3rd, Parks and Highway, March 10th, schools, and March 17th, police, fire, and facilities, correct?
Yeah,
That's
Lincoln,
correct.
is it possible for somebody to send out calendar invites?
Yeah, I or Melissa can do that.
I find those very, very helpful.
Yeah.
Keeping everything together.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, with
Motion to
that.
adjourn.
Second.
That came quick. All
Don't all
right.
jump at the same time.
Let's have a roll call with that. Justin Evans,
Yes.
Fred Smalls,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes, sir.
Lincoln,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes.
and Don, yes. Have a good weekend, guys.
Thank you,
Excellent.
gentlemen. Good
Thanks,
night.
everyone.
Yeah, have a good night.